Hello, today I would like to introduce a more theoretical and perhaps philosophical perspective on astrology, magic, and occultism. It is necessary, I believe, to address the foundations of these ancient practices as a symbolic systems enclosed in spiritual, mystical, and esoteric traditions. How far can these teachings take us? Well, the hope of the esoteric student is a delicate thing, elusive and deceptive by nature. It flickers like a distant flame, and it is fueled by the belief that one holds the keys to the universe, the answers to all of nature's secret workings. When we compare the many fragments that make up this body of hidden knowledge, be they ancient superstitions, inherited beliefs, forgotten rites, or shadowy teachings, there is a curious pattern, a logic distinctly human, but mysteriously universal, as if carved into the very blueprint of the mind itself. So from this foundation, two of the oldest and most enduring mystical systems emerge: astrology and magic. Astrology, the study that teaches of how the stars shape us, how the universe and planets might determine our thoughts, our past, and our fates. In its extreme form, it leans towards fatalism, where every human action is a note pre-written in the cosmic symphony. Magic, on the other hand, speaks of the power within, the capacity of the human will to shape the world outside of us. It is the path of indeterminism, and in its farthest reaches even flirts with solipsism, the idea that the world is but a projection of the mind. Now, between these two, determinism and will, fate and freedom, lies the timeless question: do we choose, or are we chosen? Is each gesture of our hand ours alone, or just a ripple caused by celestial tides? Imagine two eternal faces locked in a silent stare. One insists that every breath we take is orchestrated by the stars, and the other claims the human spirit knows no limits. As with most truths, the answer likely resides somewhere in the middle. To see the future, well, what a remarkable ambition that would be. If we are to call these systems sciences, then perhaps this would be their highest goal. And strangely enough, the idea is not absurd. Mathematics and physics have long shown us that time and space are intertwined, as one cannot exist without the other. In such a reality, is yesterday truly behind us and tomorrow ahead? Or are these simply directions like north and south? Now, some speak with wonder about traveling back in time, while others shuffle cards or look into coffee grounds claiming to see what is yet to come. Between these extremes, the speculative scientist and intuitive mystic, perhaps the wisest path is one of cautious balance, a middle ground, not too gullible and not too skeptical, sober and anchored, yet open and curious. Astrology has long been imagined as a cosmic symphony, seen as a scale of celestial vibrations. In Greek mythology, this was symbolized by the tale of Orpheus, the master musician, playing the melodies of life on his seven-stringed harp. His music was said to reflect the harmony of the universe itself. Now, there is also a curious story, and I hesitate to mention any names because the sources are unclear and I haven't looked too deeply into it. But it is said that someone once tried to capture the vibrations of fixed stars using a microphone and polished steel plates. The idea was to translate starlight into sound. Each star, they claimed, produced a unique tone. The brighter the star, the less pure its tone. So the sun, for example, emitted millions of chaotic sounds. Sirius gave off tones of agony. Arcturus at first roared like a hurricane, then softened into something calm and soothing. And other stars sang in sweet, exquisite tones. Now, whether that is true or not, I do not know, but the idea behind it is interesting, that the universe itself is a kind of music, a harmony, and astrology in a way is the study of that cosmic harmony. It explores the relationship between the heavens and the earth, showing how each body, each star and planet, each living being, even each atom, plays its own note in the grand symphony of existence. In addition, I did read that NASA recently recorded the sounds of the sun, so there's that. Another historical anecdote involves the astronomer Edmund Halley, who publicly dismissed astrology. To this, Isaac Newton replied, "Sir, I have studied the matter. You have not." It was a brief exchange, and I'm not sure that this is exactly what happened, but it was said that in private, Newton studied astrological texts, palmistry, alchemical treatises, and biblical prophecy with the same intensity he brought to calculus or celestial mechanics. And for alchemy, I'm pretty sure it is true. But his personal library actually had only a couple of books, I think 4, on astrology. Johannes Kepler, discoverer of the laws of planetary motion, cast horoscopes and was also paid to do it. And he wrote in a letter dating from 1602, "The belief in the effect of the constellations derives in the first place from experience, which is so convincing that it can be denied only by those who have not examined it." Galileo himself drew charts for others, but also for his family as well as for himself. And I have read somewhere that the birth charts are the sole source of evidence concerning his birth date. And of course, Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, I do mention him from time to time. He used astrology in his therapeutic practice, seeing it as a symbolic mirror of the unconscious. Now, these were all great minds, looking into the night sky through telescopes and through symbols and meaning. One of the most comprehensive contributions to astrological literature is the Bhrigu Samhita, an ancient Indian treatise attributed to the sage Bhrigu. It is said to contain detailed formulas for determining the names and characteristics of individuals, as well as information about past, present, and future lives. Now, whether this claim is historical or mythical is in some sense beside the point. What matters is the extent to which astrology has, across cultures, been regarded as a broad and divine science of the human condition. So why then does astrology carry such a heavy stigma today? The answer lies in its presentation, not in its substance. Over time, astrology has been stripped of its depth and mystique, repackaged into simplistic horoscopes and shallow predictions or fortunes written beside comic strips or algorithms churning out daily affirmations. Let me assure you, the true astrologer is not a fortune teller, nor is the real occultist a psychic or a performer. They are more akin to mathematicians of the invisible or cartographers of the soul, those who study the symbolic language of the heavens to interpret the inner architecture of human experience. They do not guess or prophesy, they read and translate. Imagine astrology as a large ancient clockwork, its gears made of stars and its pendulum swinging between chaos and order. To observe it is to seek understanding, not to surrender to fate, and to study it is to learn a language of cycles, correspondences, archetypes, and rhythms that repeat across history and soul alike. It is not easy to measure the depth or the reach of astrology. It defies simple categories and refuses to be boxed into formulas. But if one truly wishes to understand it, if one is genuinely curious, then there is only one course: study it as a language, not as superstition, because it is a language written in the stars. Can we measure its reach with precision? Well, no more than we can weigh a dream or chart the dimensions of a soul. Yet for those who want to study it seriously, astrology opens a doorway into a deeper form of knowing, a knowledge that stretches back through the corridors of time, guiding the hands of emperors, mystics, scientists, and seekers. But how did astrology come to be? Now, the origins are somewhat wrapped in myth and layered with symbolism. One theory suggests that astrology emerged from early religious systems. In the beginning, humanity's gods were few but mighty cosmic principles personified. Each deity was assigned a star or a planet, so the heavens became a divine map. That is why across cultures we find similarities in planetary names. So Venus is Inanna and Aphrodite, Mars is Nergal or Ares. The sun most often stood as the supreme god, giver of life, seer of all. Its metal was gold, its color radiant, and its symbolism unmistakable. Another theory points to astrolatry, the direct worship of the stars. With their distant, untouchable beauty and their silent procession through the night sky, the stars awakened admiration in early humans. They were more than lights, they were living intelligences, celestial beings to be revered. From this awe came devotion, and from devotion, the idea that these heavenly bodies did more than shine. They ruled, governed human life, shaping destinies with precision. But here, the truth does not simply lie somewhere in the middle. It lies beneath both. In nearly every ancient tradition, before the sun was worshipped, before gods were named, there was one greater power: time. The ultimate mover, the unseen architect, usually personified as Kronos or Saturn, time was not a measurement, it was the very origin, the one who began all beginnings. Now later, as human imagination required something more visible, more radiant, time gave way to the sun, the visible keeper of cycles, the day bringer, the eye in the sky. So whether astrology was born from gods projected into the stars or from stars shaping the idea of gods, what remains is that the heavens have always mirrored the soul's longing to understand its place in the great design. And astrology in its true form is the ancient language we created to describe that movement or dance between above and below. Now let's be clear about what astrology can and cannot do, because this is where many get confused. Astrology can reveal much about a person's character, their tendencies, even their potential vulnerabilities. For example, it might show inclination towards certain illnesses or psychological patterns, or hint at where ambition, caution, or even fanaticism may lie within someone's nature. But it will never tell you the color of someone's hair or eyes, their blood type, or even exactly how long they will live. These details are simply beyond its scope. And I say this very seriously. Astrology does not predict these tangible biological facts. Furthermore, the influence of fame, the environment someone grows up in, or the myriad of external factors that shape a life cannot be calculated with precision by looking at the stars. And here is an important point. No astrologer can claim to fully understand how a particular planetary aspect from the past may have altered a person's relationship with society or changed the course of their life in concrete ways. The human story is far too complex for such absolute judgments. Now that said, in some cases, astrology can point to tendencies, a potential leaning towards vices like alcoholism or drug abuse, the risks of fanaticism or paranoia, predispositions toward luck or misfortune, even hints about physical traits or health challenges. But these are patterns, not destinies, and they offer insight, not a verdict. Consider the story of a great thinker who, despite a challenging natal chart indicating potential struggles with inner demons, chose a path of healing and wisdom. Or the athlete whose chart suggested vulnerability to injury, but whose discipline and environment helped him or her to thrive against the odds. Think of it like this. Astrology sketches broad brushstrokes on the canvas of life. It shows patterns of light and shadow, the landscapes of strength and vulnerability. But the details, the fine lines and the colors are filled in by free will, circumstance, and the choices we make every day. Now, this balance between cosmic influence and self-determination is the heartbeat of astrology's true power. It asks us to understand ourselves, to anticipate challenges, and to embrace opportunities, but never to surrender to a fixed fate. And in that elegant movement lies the mystery and the gift of the stars. Example, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, whose natal chart is quite interesting as it reveals placements suggesting both genius and emotional intensity, with tendencies towards volatility and mood swings. But despite the struggles indicated by some astrological factors, Mozart's extraordinary creativity and perseverance defined his legacy. His chart suggested great talent, but it was his choices, discipline, and passion that shaped history. Then there is Abraham Lincoln, also studied by many astrologers for his complex birth chart. Some interpret his chart as pointing toward deep inner conflicts, periods of depression, and enormous responsibility. But still, the very same chart also points to strength, resilience, and a visionary spirit. And this one I too find very interesting. His chart shows that while astrology can reveal patterns of struggle and strength, it cannot dictate the choices that lead to greatness or failure. Now, what I can say with some confidence is this. Those under the strong positive influence of Mars, the Sun, or even Saturn tend to be the most straightforward, the ones who lie the least as their nature leans towards strength, integrity, and a certain constancy. Now, conversely, those influenced strongly by Mercury or Neptune may possess a more elusive, sometimes deceptive quality, more inclined toward delusion, misdirection, or even self-deception. Then individuals ruled predominantly by the Moon may exhibit timidity or sensitivity, though this too speaks only to tendencies rather than absolute truths. So why would a so-called malefic planet in the 5th house suggest misfortune in love? Why is the hour of birth considered so important? Some even ask if the hour of conception might be more significant. But the truth is, before birth, a child doesn't yet exist as a separate individual. All the functions, digestion, heartbeat, breathing, brain activity, they operate in sync with the mother. It is during birth, that dramatic moment, that the child becomes independent. That moment is an adventure in itself. It is a powerful interplay of the 4 elements. It is as if nature, through billions of years, shaped a body in its own image, and now, in the act of birth, it repeats the entire story in a matter of seconds. At that moment, the whole structure of cosmic energy, the stars, the planets, the sun, gravity, it all aligns to imprint a kind of pattern or design onto the newborn, a scheme that will guide the growth of the body, mind, and one's life. Astrology uses a symbolic language, fields, houses, signs, planets, and this language is so complex that to a beginner it might seem almost too convenient, as if it's been designed to answer everything: personality, potential, finances, inheritance, love, friends, enemies, travel, study, health, fame, failure, even death. But the truth is, astrology is just as complex and layered as the human being. It is not about quick answers or fortune telling. It really does require deep intuition, rigorous practice, and real knowledge to understand what matters most for each unique individual. And here lies one of astrology's fundamental limitations. No chart, no planetary configuration can fully capture the complexities of human behavior. Any person, regardless of their stars, can become a liar, a coward, or unscrupulous under certain circumstances. This is why we say character is the basis of destiny. The stars may sketch the outline, suggest potential, but it is the character shaped by choice, experience, and will which ultimately carves the path. In a world that moves fast and relies so much on data and certainty, astrology offers something else. It gives us a moment to pause, to look up, and to reflect on the idea that meaning might exist both within us and up there, in the patterns of the sky. And no matter how you choose to see astrology, whether as a spiritual tool, a way to explore the mind, or just a poetic way of understanding life, it asks us to take a step back and see the bigger picture, to recognize that our lives are part of something larger, something connected. Maybe astrology isn't really about predicting the future. Maybe it's more about perspective, as it just might remind us that we're part of rhythm, a pattern of something meaningful. And maybe by learning the language of the stars, become a little closer to understanding ourselves and each other. To wrap up this video, I want to add something about my relationship with astrology and the occult. I didn't come to astrology or occultism because I believed in it, not in the traditional sense anyway. In fact, I still wouldn't say I believe in astrology or occultism in the conventional sense of belief, at least not in a way that requires suspension of critical thinking. What really shifted my perspective was taking the time to study these systems rigorously and on my own terms. I actually immersed myself in the theory extensively, engaged with practitioners, earned certificates, diplomas, and worked alongside people who have dedicated decades to these disciplines. And somewhere along the way, it started working for me in ways I hadn't anticipated. If I had approached astrology with blind acceptance or dismissed it outright as pseudoscience, I don't think I would have arrived at the level of understanding I have today. Some of the earlier videos I made on sun signs, ascendants, planetary symbolism were lighter in tone and meant more as an entry point. I never expected people to take those at face value or adopt them as belief systems. I probably won't be creating content around current lunar eclipses or planetary alignments and how they supposedly affect individuals. Personally, I don't find that approach very compelling, at least not in a literal sense. What I am more interested in now are the underlying structures, the philosophical roots of astrology, symbolic language, its intersections with mythology, psychology, and esoteric traditions. There's so much more to uncover in astrology, and even more so in the broader world of occultism. These are complex, multi-layered systems, not things to blindly follow. These are tools of a sort that open up new ways of asking questions. Okay, so thanks for watching. If you have thoughts or experiences you'd like to share, please feel free to leave a comment. I'd be genuinely interested to hear, or better said, read them. See you next week. Bye.